In today's world, you hear labels like fascist thrown around all the time, right? On the news, on social media. It gets so overused that you start to wonder what it even really means. So, what if we could just cut through all that noise? Well, today, we're going to do just that. We're going to take apart one of history's most loaded ideologies to figure out what it actually is. But before we dive headfirst into one specific, really heavy ideology, it kind of helps to have a map of the whole landscape. Understanding where different ideas fit and maybe even where you fit is the first step to being able to clearly spot these ideologies when they pop up. And if you are curious about finding your own spot on that map, there's a really great tool out there called 8Values.cc. It's a website with a pretty detailed quiz that helps you get your bearings on the whole political spectrum. Honestly, it's a fascinating way to get some clarity, which, hey, is our exact goal today as we turn our focus to the enigma of fascism. All right, so let's get into it. Fascism is, without a doubt, one of history's most charged terms. It's an insult, it's a warning, it's a historical category, but what it is specifically, that can be really hard to pin down. Our mission here is to slice through the confusion and find some real answers. So the word itself actually comes from ancient Rome, from the fasces. This was a bundle of wooden rods tied tightly around an axe. And the symbolism here is, wow, it's incredibly powerful. Think about it. The rods are the people, all bound together, inseparable, one unit. And the axe? That's the state's absolute, unquestionable authority. It's no accident that Benito Mussolini picked this symbol. The message was crystal clear. Every single person exists to serve one single all-powerful state. Now, for more academic take, the historian Stanley G. Payne gives us one of the best definitions out there. He basically breaks it down into three parts. First, what fascism is against. And this is key. It's anti-liberal, anti-communist, and, this might surprise you, it's also anti-conservative. Second, what it wants. That's a nationalist dictatorship, a complete overhaul of society, and ultimately an empire. And third, its style. Think romantic symbols, making violence seem glorious, and a massive cult of personality built around one charismatic leader. Mussolini himself just summed it up perfectly with this quote. When he says it's going to be a collective century, he's throwing the whole 19th century idea of individualism and personal freedom right out the window. For a fascist, the state is everything. The individual, you only exist to serve the state. Your personal identity, your community, all of that comes second to your absolute loyalty to the nation. Okay, so this is a spot where a lot of people get confused. Weren't fascism and Nazism basically the same thing? Well, not exactly. For Italian fascism, the ultimate goal, the thing to be worshipped, was the state itself. But for German National Socialism, Nazism, the state was just a tool. The real ideal for the Nazis was the purity and total dominance of the quote-unquote Aryan race. The state's whole job was to serve that racial goal, not the other way around. It's a really crucial difference. So, to try and make this whole complex idea a little simpler, scholars often boil what they call generic fascism down to three core pillars. This framework is super helpful for seeing the common threads that run through different fascist movements across history. So what are they? First up, ultranationalism. And we're not just talking about patriotism here. This is an obsessive, all-consuming belief in your nation's superiority and destiny. Second, revolution. Fascism doesn't want to tweak the system. It wants to violently tear down the old order and build something new in its place. And third is this myth of rebirth, this idea of palingenesis, a promise to bring the nation back from the brink of decay and kickstart a brand new golden age of glory. But you have to ask yourself, how did such an extreme idea ever get off the ground? Well, it didn't just appear out of nowhere. Fascism was born out of a massive crisis. It was a direct, brutal answer to the chaos and trauma that had a death grip on Europe in the early 20th century. I mean, just picture the perfect storm brewing in Europe at the time. You have the absolute devastation of World War I, which shattered old empires and old certainties. Then, the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia sparks this huge fear of communism spreading everywhere. And to top it all off, the Great Depression hits, and people's faith in democracy and capitalism just evaporates. Into that void, fascism steps in with a seductive, if terrifying, promise. We will give you order. We will give you strength. We will make our nation great again. This brings us to a really powerful modern way of understanding how fascism not only comes to power, but how it works. The Nobel laureate Toni Morrison laid out this chillingly familiar pattern. A 10-step guide, really, that a society can follow on its path to fascism. And it's a huge warning that this stuff isn't just ancient history. The first 6 steps are all about laying the groundwork. It all starts by creating an internal enemy, a scapegoat to blame for all the nation's problems. Then, you isolate and demonize that enemy. You use the media to blast out your message, you shut down any art or culture that pushes back, and you attack anyone who dares to show sympathy. And the final piece of this stage? You find collaborators from inside the enemy group to make the whole process look legitimate. And the final steps. This is where the trap slams shut. The enemy is now painted as a disease, as less than human. This makes it easy to criminalize them, to build prisons or camps to contain them. At the same time, you keep the general public distracted with bread and circuses, entertainment, and you reward them for just looking the other way. And the final, critical step that holds the whole rotten structure together? Enforced silence, making sure no one dares to speak out. So, the most important point Toni Morrison makes is this. The slide into tyranny isn't a sudden fall off a cliff, it's a staircase. It happens one step at a time, often so slowly that people don't even realize how dangerous it is until it's way too late. Every single step just makes the next one seem normal. And that really leaves us with one final, pretty provocative question to chew on. As you look at the world today, as you scroll through your feeds and listen to the political debates, do any of these patterns, these steps, seem familiar? See, understanding how an ideology like fascism works isn't just a history lesson. It's an absolutely vital tool for making sense of the world we live in right now.